Hello and welcome to my new RuLit series. My name is Katya and today I would like to talk to you about Russian literature. So why RuLit? Well, first of all, because it is about Russian literature. Second, RuLit was one of the first online communities on LiveJournal platform that probably only dinosaurs like me remember these days. And it started in the late 1990s or early 2000s, when everything in Russia was so different and so full of hopes. It was a very different country back then. And finally, I chose this name because RuLit can also sound as a Russian word, which can be translated as steering, like a steering wheel, or even ruling, when Russian literature rules. Yeah, it's really great. What is it about? As both an avid book reader and a fledgling writer, a lifetime learner and also a teacher of Russian literature in a Canadian university, I always love going beyond just reading a story, just talking about the background or following the plot. I always read around. Yeah, it can be a writer's biography and can be the cultural background. It can be the historical prototypes or historical circumstances, or even more interestingly, more ancient mythological roots of certain imagery or characters. In my essays and in my teaching, I always try to share my discoveries, and as far as I can see, my audience usually appreciates it. With Russian literature, whenever you chat about it with someone who is not from Russia or someone, who is not specializing in this field, people usually know Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, or as people say, Tolstoyevsky. There is a famous joke which kind of blends these two names together. Sometimes people know them thanks to the adaptations, to film or TV series adaptations, such as a relatively recent Anna Karenina or the BBC TV series War and Peace, or again, a lot of multiple adaptations on Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, including the 1935 with Peter Lorre or 2002 with John Seam. However, do not expect me to talk about Crime and Punishment or War and Peace, because again, these authors are fairly well known outside of Russia. Instead, I want to go deeper and present the writers that are extremely important for the canon of Russian literature. But outside of it, they are for the most part unknown. I mean, if you are interested in Russian literature, you might have heard of Alexander Pushkin, who is very, very extremely famous. He is really, considered like the best writer and poet in Russian canon. If you are not really familiar with this literature, but if you are a fan of classic opera, you might have heard about Eugene Onegin, his novel in verse, adapted by Pyotr Tchaikovsky, or The Queen of Spades, another amazing opera, also based on Pushkin's work. But how about his short stories? Have you heard of them? They are true gems of prose. The Shot, The Blizzard or The Snowstorm, or The Postmaster. I'd love to introduce you to these little masterpieces that are well translated and truly worth reading, and they are again very, very short. I also want to talk about his younger fellow writer and poet, Mikhail Lermontov, whose novel A Hero of Our Time was the first example of the psychological prose written in Russian. I will talk about Nikolai Gogol, who was also inspired by Pushkin, but went much further, creating a range of stories, from the folklore-based tales about witches and demons to his dark and satiric Dead Souls, his last novel. I will talk about Russian romantics that produced amazing poetry and prose, including Vasily Zhukovsky and my personal favorite, Vladimir Dostoevsky. I will talk about natural school of writing and how the liberal reforms and huge shifts in Russian society of the mid-19th century gave rise to such authors as Ivan Turgenev and Goncharov. I don't want to overload you with names, so I will stop here, but I hope that this series will help you to find interesting stories in Russian literature. So why watch this series? Let's say you are interested in the 19th century Russian literature but do not know where to start. Or maybe you have read the stories that I discuss here but want more background and analysis. Maybe you do not have time or energy to search for academic papers, which is absolutely understandable. My videos are short and laconic. That's how I work and write. I like creating shorter text and shorter videos. My videos will give you a combination of brief plot summary and background information, but more importantly, they will give you an instrument that will make reading more fun. You will see how many layers these stories have and how wonderful it is to peel off these layers and maybe even see these plots through the eyes of a 19th century audience. With my casual and relaxed manner, and of course my accent, that I hope you will get used to, I hope that this will be a rewarding experience. Who am I? Finally, a bit about myself. As I said, my name is Katya. I was born in Russia back when it was Soviet Union. I lived there till my very early 20s and then immigrated. This was more than 25 years ago. You can guess my age now. I studied at one of the first free universities in Russia in the 90s, back when it was all new and we were still full of hope, and was privileged to attend lectures of the best scholars of those times, such as Mikhail Gasparov, Elizar Militinsky, Vladimir Toporov, and many, many others. I did a double major in classic and Russian studies for my bachelor's, and while writing my undergraduate thesis, got hooked on the origins of journalism and mass literature in the 19th century Russia. Half of my academic writing is based on this material. I was interested in doctors, both as characters, but also as writers, decades before Anton Chekhov, a famous physician writer, was even born. This became a central point of my research interest, and when I started my master's and PhD program at Stanford University in California, this is what I focused on. I studied both first-rate and second- and third-rate stories published in literary journals of the 1830s, 1840s, to trace the origins of medicine in Russia, again, both as a topic for fiction and as a real activity. Later, when our family settled in Canada, and yes, I am a lifetime immigrant, I started teaching at one of local universities, mostly Russian language for the beginners, but also Russian film and literature. I work with a wide range of people, from the Russian heritage speakers to people that are just interested in this language and culture. Aside of that, I love sci-fi stories, British TV, especially Doctor Who, and my interests span from the modern fan culture to adaptations. And by the way, one day I hope to make a series about this as well. I love rock music, I write essays, and I take 3D photos as my hobby. If you look at my channel, you may see a series of video podcasts dedicated to an online stereo community. That's another project I am very proud of. I hope you enjoy this new series. If you have any suggestions about the topics that you'd like me to talk about, please let me know in the comment section. But now let's talk about literature. And please make sure you like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.